Hi, everyone. Welcome in. We'll get started in just a few seconds. Um, Welcome to VMUG Webcast. If you've never joined us before, we're excited to have you here. Um, a couple housekeeping things. Our panelists will be utilizing the Q&A feature below, so please use that to enter all your questions, and then we'll make sure that they get answered, and then you can use the chat feature for networking and other things like that. This session is also being recorded and you'll be getting a recording after the webcast today. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kelsey.
All right. Well, thank you for that. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for attending our VMUG session today. I'm Kelsey Lemon, Product Marketing Engineer for the VCL division here at Broadcom. And me and my colleagues are here today to talk about the latest features in VMware Cloud Foundation 9 so that you can unlock its power. And so, with that being said, we've got an action-packed agenda here for the next 60 minutes. And I'm going to kick things off as far as an agenda goes by just really talking about how VCF can help you modernize your infrastructure with operation workflows. Then we're going to turn it over to Vincent, who will highlight how VCF 9 can help you deliver infrastructure as a service with its automation tools. And then that's going to be followed by Katarina, who's going to show you how VCF 9 can help you deliver a unified cloud experience for developers with its Kubernetes capabilities. And then Bob, our resident security guru, he's going to take us home. He's going to wrap things up by discussing how VCF 9 can help you secure and protect your private cloud. And so with that, let's just go ahead and just get right into it, right? And so, on the operations side of things, right, when looking at modernizing your infrastructure, VCF 9 and its operations console really provides admins a unified experience for health and diagnostics. There's integrated log network and storage operation capabilities, as well as cross management or FinOps, right? With its newly integrated chargeback capabilities. And so, what we're getting ready to do right now is we're going to look at each one of these in more detail, starting with how you can unlock the power of VCF 9's new health and diagnostic capabilities. And so, as we all know, right, maintaining a stable and secure environment is a constant challenge for admins. We need tools that's going to accelerate the discovery and the prevention of costly issues before they occur, and even speed SLAs when we can't resolve the issue on our own. And I'm happy to say that VCF Health and Diagnostics really address these challenges with its ability to diagnose known issues impacting VCF software in a centralized location. So we're talking about that proverbial single pane of glass, right? We're able to view security risks based on CVEs and VMSAs, as well as just really understand impacted components such as unresponsive hosts, as well as vSAN and NSX Health. And if an issue such as a security advisory is identified, we can even get recommendations on how to remediate that issue ourselves. And if we can't resolve the issue on our own, right, we can package and send log bundles via VCS Log Assist capability directly to our tech support team, which will help them in turn, speed discovery and drive faster SLAs. And so I know you guys aren't here to check me out and talk. So let's just get in the product and just check out the demo in action here. And so, VCF Health and Diagnostics, they work together by highlighting both existing and potential issues that impact the stability, the security, and the resiliency of your infrastructure if they aren't addressed. And so, for existing issues that you may need to react to, VCF Health shows the operational state of critical components such as certificates, NTP drift, DNS lookup issues, and even non-responsive hosts to really ensure that everything is functioning correctly, ranging from issues related to connectivity, utilization, the health of your services, and even capabilities such as vMotion and snapshots. And if we were to flip this around and look at the proactive side of things, diagnostics will highlight potential issues that you can really address based on level of severity. It's going to summarize the issue, give you a list of the impacted objects, and even give you recommendations on how to solve it yourself. And if you can't remediate the issue on your own, like I said, you can even send log bundles to our support team via Log Assist. And basically what Log Assist does is, again, it automates that bundle creation and that transmission. It's a guided process where you can associate a bundle with an SR and just send it directly to our support team. And so all in all, these two features, health and diagnostics, really work together to, again, increase visibility, speed discovery, and drive faster resolution of issues. And then now let's just talk about, unlocking the power of integrated infrastructure operations. So we're going to just kick things off by just looking specifically at logs, right? And so with VCF 9, you get a new and integrated experience with the ability to filter and search log events. You can even analyze logs based on powerful queries and charts. And in the analyze logs pane that you can see right here, you can even search and filter log events and even create queries to extract events based on timestamps, text, and even other fields. And speaking of filters, right? The log analysis widget within the dashboard allows you to visualize your queries as charts, which will help you uncover additional insights. And what's really, really great about this is that you can also even define and trigger new alerts, based on log events, again, which can really help you proactively identify potential problems before they even occur. And then finally, right, you can even compare logs side by side, from different time periods, log sources to really identify the source of any anomalies and even resolve them. And one of the things that I want to point out is that currently you can compare up to 4 log streams at once, which is really, really cool. But the goodness doesn't stop there, right? With the new network operations homepage, you get enhanced visibility into network troubleshooting, as well as visibility for optimization planning and even workload migrations. And so with that, let's just go ahead and just break this all down. And so one of the really, really cool things here is that we've got this top talkers widget, which can help you identify the busiest VMs and containers within an application or Kubernetes cluster, as well as the busiest traffic by flow volume, by traffic rate, as well as session and flow count in your environment. Similarly, you also get insight into abnormal flows and even outliers, via supporting metrics and logs. And then there's even the VM to VM path analysis tool, right, which actually helps to plot the path of a source entity that path that it basically would take to reach the destination entity of your network, right? And so basically what this means is that with this, we can find out how a VM or a container is communicating with a database instance on a VM. And so with that, we can understand the hops, if you will, that is involved going from a logical port to a logical switch to a physical switch device. And then finally, we can even use flow-based application discovery, which basically leverages machine learning to identify network traffic patterns and even group VMs together within an application within these boundaries, right? And even these tiers that actually you can define yourself. And so ultimately what this does, it actually helps keep applications up to date because it automatically detects new flow patterns and topology changes. And rounding out the improvements on integrated operations, right? Global visibility and insight for storage has also been improved within VCF. And there are 3 new dashboards to help take the mystery out of storage administration, if you will. And so first, there is the storage operations overview dashboard, which will allow you to see, storage alert trends. You can see your vSAN cluster health score and even vSAN cluster performance. And then there is the vSAN performance dashboard, which will allow you to summarize the performance condition of a selected cluster. And then finally, there is the vSAN performance diagnostic dashboard. Say that real fast, right? But ultimately, what that will allow you to do is it'll allow you to test new clusters entering production, as well as existing clusters that are already in production. And so combined, right, all 3 of these dashboards provide a holistic view of conditions, including key metrics and health information that is all being retrieved from vSAN APIs. And now I'm going to wrap things up in my portion just by talking about one of my favorite topics, which is cost management. And so, if you're providing service to a tenant, you often face the challenge of, balancing operational efficiency and fairness when creating chargebacks, right? And without the proper tools in place, chargebacks can be a very manual, time-consuming, very tedious process that not only impacts your operational efficiency, but it could quite frankly lead to disputes with tenants, right, who may not necessarily have the full transparency that they need to truly understand their bill. And so I'm happy to say that the chargeback feature within VCF alleviates these challenges with the capabilities that you can see right here. So let me just go ahead and just break this down. So providers can define rate cards, right, that calculate metering rates for compute, for storage, and networking, as well as other agreed upon costs, like maybe starting up a VM for a first time. And you can do that for any org or region combination. Providers can also generate bills for their tenant manually as they're needed, or even automate their creation with its scheduling capability. And then once a bill is generated, tenants can see a detailed breakdown of all of those costs via the automation console within VCF. And so again, enough talking. Let's just go ahead and just check this out in action. And so, the chargeback feature can be accessed under the cost option, under the capacity drop down. And here you can view tenant information through a variety of different lenses. So first there is the overview page, which presents a high-level summary of chargeback data, including cost and price across the organizations, your region quotas, and even your running VMs. And then there is the organization view, which displays chargeback breakdowns for each organization and their corresponding region quotas. And then finally, there is a project level view, which offers a comprehensive view of cost and pricing across all of your project within VCF automation, with additional insights into associated namespaces and deployments. And so one of the things that I want to point out here is that the corresponding dashboards and these charts just really make it easier to track and analyze resource usage costs at every level in your environment, right? And then as we sort of talk about it and we move forward, just talking about billing, right? The billing capability allows you to generate bills seamlessly for your tenants, right? It transforms, again, that often complex billing process into a streamlined and automated and even an error-free operation that really ensures consistency in every transaction. And there are two ways you can do it. And first, there is the on-demand billing where the bill is generated manually. It's a guided process where you enter your start and end dates. You take your billing objects, which can be an organization or region quota, and then with a simple quick, voila, your bill is there reflecting all of your tenants' resource usage accurately. And then with a more automated approach, you can just click on schedule bills. And this action provides even more efficiency by leveraging Automation Central, where you can set up automated bill generation. Again, you take those billing details, you take your billing objects, drag and drop, and then you've got an automatic schedule, as you can see here. And so it's very straightforward, just like that. And with that, I just burnt through that really, really quickly, but we got a lot going on here. So with Vince, my friend, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kelsey. All right, let me share my screen, I guess. All right, thanks, everyone. Okay, wonderful. Okay, well, thanks, everybody, for jumping on here today. My name is Vince Riccio, product marketing engineer, focused mostly on the VCF automation pieces. And so what I'm going to talk about today really is, how do you sort of take, VMware Cloud Foundation, the services, all the goodness there, and start to consume it a bit, or at least build up to where you can start to consume and deploy applications and services ultimately. Before I jump into that, though, let me just kind of preface a little bit of what we're kind of doing from a solution standpoint in terms of some of the key areas. And I'll try to go through this a little quickly. And I have just a few slides and I'll jump into a demo as well. So, when we look at how do we really kind of build out this private cloud and start to consume, we have to first look at personas, like who are the folks that are going to be consuming this, and who's going to be doing the setup, and who's going to be actually doing the consumption. And so that's the first thing to kind of look at. So we have some examples on the left-hand side. Obviously, that could vary depending upon your organization. And then also on the right-hand side, if you look underneath it, right, we have that VMware Cloud Foundation infrastructure, those SDDC services. But if you pay attention to that purple box real quick, those are some of the new things and some of the things that we've enhanced. But I'll kind of go through those real quick. Governance and policies. One thing we did introduce new in the product was the ability to do policy as code using IaaS for IaaS policies. So that policy as code feature will be very specific to, let's say, a Kubernetes policy based on a VM deployed using our custom resource definitions for Kubernetes. So there are some policies in there that follow the validation and mission control CL languages of Kubernetes. So governance still being in there as well in terms of other things like approvals, lease times, placement decisions, and so forth. And then infrastructure as code still being predominant in our product. Obviously, we have different levels that you can use it. We have combination of UI versus in code, or you can do everything in all code, and so forth. Private AI automation was something that we actually started to invest in from an automation standpoint in the last couple of years. And what this basically allows folks to do is through an easy wizard, just go in and set up some catalog items. So data scientists and folks can jump in and deploy AI workstations, AI workstation clusters, RAG clusters, things like that. Now, something new is the cloud services, and in a sense, it's new in terms of how we are at least consuming them from an automation standpoint. And that refers to a number of things inside the product. You're going to see some of that in this particular session and in the next session. Is going to be like, services like the VM service to deploy a virtual machine using Kubernetes manifest, VKS, right, which is the Kubernetes cluster. Then there's other services around networking, storage, et cetera. And then there's an extensible section or list of services, which, maybe are more advanced or maybe can have different use cases, such as services like Harbor, and then Argo CD for, continuous delivery, Harbor being for your image management, some secret stuff that we have in there now, and so forth. And so there's a big list. And so just kind of be on the lookout for that. I even have a slide here that goes over some of those I forgot. So we'll look at that in the next slide. And then another big one is tenant management. Tenant management really being sort of a key concept here. And when we say tenant management, we also can think about it just as organization management. If that term seems kind of like it could be a lot to kind of manage, it's really quite easy in the product. It's kind of an organization. You set up these organizations and you can provide different resources, carve out resources from supervisor clusters, which are one or more vSphere clusters that have been turned into, we call a supervisor, that allows us to deploy and manage namespaces onto them and do stuff inside those namespaces. But tenant management allows us to do some isolation. So with the introduction of, like, let's say the VPC, or being more included into our automation tool, we can further define, even on the network, some isolation there. And we can even create namespaces and stuff that also have some isolation. So there's a lot of ways to kind of do this, but and in our documentation we recently released, there are some design guides in there as well for that. Content management also being another big one. That sort of being just being able to produce or let's say publish images and different types of content to these various tenants or organizations, either from one place where they can kind of manage their own. We'll probably talk a little bit about that as well. With orchestration extensibility, we're continuing down the line of being able to be very extensible with our services. In fact, inside the product, there's a services extensibility capability. But we also have orchestrators still in there as well. So if you're used to doing things like XaaS or continuing to use orchestrator as part of your lifecycle of your deployments and stuff like that, that is still there. And then workload lifecycle management, right? Taking those day two actions, the lease times, and so forth. Now, the other thing that we want to do is also give folks choice, right? Choice in how they want to consume. If you look at that top one with the self-service catalog, self-service IaaS, going across UI, CLI, and API. Today, I'm going to focus on, in my session, a little bit more on the catalog and some of the self-service IaaS pieces, which we call the services UI, which does allow you inside of the interface to deploy, let's say, a VM using, the VM service or VM operator, which is a Kubernetes-based system. So I'll show you that a little bit as we kind of go along. So here's just a quick glimpse of some of those services I was talking about. I won't obviously have time to go into all these. Left-hand side, the two that will the one I'll probably focus on, and you'll see, is the VM service. VKS service will be probably in the next session if I can't get to it here. And potentially kind of, I don't want to put you on the spot there, but you might see it here today, or we'll at least talk about it in the demo. Some of the other ones are load balancer services, network services, things like that. And then when you look at the additional cloud services, there's a pretty good list there, right? So if you look at Argo CD for continuous delivery, data services, which I forgot to mention, that's a big one. That's actually out of the box with VCF automation now. That allows you to deploy, manage through policies and stuff like open source and some databases. And really kind of do database as a service. And then you can provide that self-service capability through automation as well. So yeah, just a quick glimpse there. And then just kind of bringing it all together a little bit. When we talk about sort of this consumption model or providing the self-service private cloud to the organization, Underneath it, right, we do need to have some things built out a little bit, like this, like the supervisor, your zones, your SEC. We'll get into that throughout the day. But then on top of that, right, is where automation kind of steps in and says, okay, let's create these regions. And what these regions are kind of doing, what they do is they take one of our supervisors in these clusters and say, okay, let's provide just a abstraction across your fleet of VCF instances or clusters, right? And so essentially, what that does is give you the ability to do more abstraction. Maybe say, okay, I want region west, region east, and then that can have a number of different zones in it that are useful or needed for the deployment. And then the organization is a way to sort of isolate users and groups and also resources and compute resources and policies into an organization that can help with some of that organization or tenant management. And then on top of that, users will come into the organization and then they will go ahead and consume or create these clusters and create their VMs and all that kind of stuff. And notice that we have virtual machines alongside clusters, right? You can do sort of this hybrid model of deploying things together, whether it's a VM and then, you know, other resources and stuff like that. Okay, so just kind of take a quick glimpse of that, and then on the like I mentioned in the beginning, the persona, right, being pretty important, is that essentially, you know, we have the end user, the org admin, and let's say the enterprise IT admin. I'll just kind of pick on those three real quick. So today we're going to see a little bit of the end user developer in terms of, hey, I'm going into the system, I want to deploy something, or I'm going to use a CLI. Here we'll see that today. You know, different ways that they might do things. Maybe take a day two action on something. Maybe get visibility into the deployments they've already got out there and stuff like that. And then the organization admin, I'll probably focus a little bit on that today too. And that's where the organization admin goes in. They're really responsible for managing that organization itself. So what policies do we want in that organization? What you know, how many projects do we need where we can bucket folks into these projects and further isolate them into different maybe application teams or something like that. And then enforce those policies, and then manage content. So what images do they need access to, and so forth. And then enterprise IT admin, I won't have time to really dive into what they do on a daily basis in here, but essentially the idea is they get everything set up so the organizations can get created. So they set up and connect to the supervisor, the vCenter, they get some of the networking set up that needs to be utilized across the organizations, as well as creating the regions themselves. So that way we know where we can deploy to and then use those regions within our organization. So hopefully that makes sense a little bit. And I think I just have one more slide. Yep, sure you get to explore. Okay, and let me go ahead and get to the demo here. Let's hopefully it didn't kick me out. Hopefully. Okay. Okay, so I know I've just got a few minutes. So what I want to do here is I'm going to log in as an organization admin. Okay, I'm going to log in as an org admin, and then essentially what I want to do here is show you a little bit about how the org admin gets a couple things set up. Now, obviously, there are some prerequisites and stuff I had to do before this, but I just want to show you some of the highlights. So some of the highlights would be the organization admin goes in, they can see all their services and all the namespaces they created. But real quick, let me just jump into projects, because this is really kind of where we get started in the sense of being able to isolate users and stuff like that. Now, we obviously may already have all this stuff set up here. I'm not going to get into all of that right now, but a project allows us essentially to have one or more namespaces and then put our users in here. So notice in this Nimbus namespace, I have two namespaces, I'm sorry, in this Nimbus project, I have two namespaces, one for development and one for production. Let me just go ahead and show you what creating a new one would look like, right? Let's say I want to just do a custom namespace. I'm going to go ahead and create a namespace or pick a namespace class. The namespace class will be a number of type of a combination of things of a VM class and some other stuff that allows us to say, okay, when you deploy this, what kind of capabilities do we need? Because we can add various capabilities into those classes, such as GPU and stuff like that. And then we have regions, which again can span something, and then our VPC. And the VPC will hold, you know, the transit gateway, the provider gateway, and all the things that we kind of need in order to get everything going. So once we have the namespace created, the user can then go in and org admin can do this as well, but the user can go in and start creating stuff. So once we got the project and namespace created, we can see our namespaces here. So notice as a project administrator or as a developer or as an application team owner, I can come in and pick the namespace I want really quickly. So this gives me the ability to quickly switch between namespaces and look at the different services in that namespace. So for instance, if I wanted to create a virtual machine from here, I can do that. And one thing that you can do when you create the virtual machine is we can deploy it, from an OVF or ISO. We pick the name, we can go in and pick our zone. And notice on the right-hand side, it's building out the code for me a bit. But this is what we can essentially do. Once we have those namespaces created, I can come in and use this particular UI to go in and deploy this virtual machine and essentially get it going. I can attach volumes. I can attach a load balancer service. And I'll show you something real quick. So let's say I attach a load balancer service here. It's going to actually create a little file up at the upper left-hand corner. I'll just do SSH here, and we'll just do 22. And I'll add that, and then hit save. And then notice up here, it'll kind of give me my load balancer spec and then my virtual machine spec. So down here, it'll call it and all that kind of stuff. So it kind of builds this out. We also have some nice new things around customization for a cloud init. We have some guided inputs for it and so forth. Now, I don't have time to really kind of get in here and show you how to, or like actually deploy this, but notice all the services over here, Kubernetes service, network service, et cetera. So this is one way to consume. Remember earlier, I was talking about a little bit about choice, going into a services UI. Once I have this built as well from the services UI here, which is what I was referring to, I can download this, copy this, and then on particular machines that have already been deployed, I can go in and actually just look at the YAML that already exists in there. Oh, I got to discard my changes. Yep. Okay, so let's say, for instance, I want to go in and look at a virtual machine. I can go in and look at an existing virtual machine that's been deployed, and then I can also view the YAML of that particular machine and then edit it and so forth. Okay, the other thing I want to do real quick before I jump and hand it off is the other way to consume is through a catalog service. So what you can also do here is you can create blueprints, right? And these blueprints are YAML based. They can be source controlled in Git, and so you can have a sync of the content. But essentially, you create these blueprints. They are drag and drop in YAML code, so you can have kind of a mixture of low code and normal code type of operations. And you publish those to the catalog, and then they become a catalog item that users can go in and just request. And they can create a form. There's an out-of-the-box form, but you can create a custom form that allows you to go in and maybe do some conditions and so forth. Like if I pick a certain drop down, then maybe some other things will show up. So this is a way to consume as well. They can go and kind of choose all the options they want, and then anything that they deploy from the catalog will show up over here, under their catalog instances and stuff like that. So just real quick, want to show you that from a perspective of the organization admin, kind of going in, setting a couple things up like the project, a couple namespaces. User goes in, uses a services UI or a catalog to essentially deploy the applications and services that they need. Then day two, they can go in and look at monitoring metrics or also look at some other things as well that they may need to look at. And if they didn't want to look at those metrics real quick, since I think I have a minute here, I could go in, like, let's say to this VM that I deployed, the SQL VM, and I could click on monitor and then just get some metrics coming over from the operations tool that Kelsey was just talking about. So just kind of wrapping up on the day two or the IT operations portion of it is that, as you have these systems deployed, I can go in here, pull metrics from operations, see those real quick, get a glimpse of some key things that I may want to take a look at. And then I can also jump into ops where there are dashboards that will give me more details about what's happening and what this VM is connected to, et cetera. So really nice way to kind of manage the entire system during the life cycle of the deployment. Okay, well, I think that's about all I had. I think I may have just a minute or two left, but I want to make sure we have enough time to transition over. So Karen, I guess I'll stop sharing and hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Vincent, for that coverage. So I'm Katarina, and now let's talk about what we're doing with Kubernetes specifically in 15 minutes or less. Starting with our VKS, our vSphere Kubernetes service. So this is the service that is embedded in VCF, and it gives you this opportunity to deploy fully conformant Kubernetes clusters in a really easy and a scalable way that you can very easily self-service, as Vincent was just talking about. But the main thing with VKS is that we really committed to rapid delivery of new versions of Kubernetes that you can use on VCF. And we have been providing you with these independent releases and an independent way of upgrading it. With VCF 9, we have embedded version of our VKS 3.3, which gave you access to Kubernetes release 1.32, for example, but also some other improvements like being able to enable FIPS on our OSs, some improvements for our Windows-based worker nodes and workloads, and simpler way of adding them to, for example, Active Directory, but also some improvements in the area of auto-scaling, for example, with the ability to scale down to 0 for your worker node. But that's not it, because at the same time as we GA'd VCF9, we also released yet another version of VKS, and that was version 3.4. That gave you access to Kubernetes release 1.33, which is also the first release where we are introducing extended support for this particular version that you will get for 24 months. And we are also bringing in other improvements, because deploying Kubernetes clusters is not just about a single cluster, but we know it's about big environments and multi-cluster management. So we are bringing those capabilities in too. And in terms of other enhancements, we do offer VKS standard packages that we give you. And these are little packages that we produce and bundle and support for you that you can install on your VKS clusters. And one of the new ones that is just fresh is, for example, Istio service mesh. So if you have workloads that need that secure service-to-service communication, we have solution for you there too. And with that, I really want to show you a very quick demo of how you would be able to get to this version of the service very quickly so you can start using these new capabilities. And in this interface, which Vincent was talking about as well, you can see if I go and deploy a Kubernetes cluster, I can see which releases are available to me. So as a consumer, I can see that there's a version 1.32. What I can also do is I can check which releases are available to me using command line if I prefer that. And what I will see here is that I can see a version 1.33 already listed, but is marked as false. And that means that it was already distributed by our subscribed content library, but the service version needs to be updated. So as a cloud admin within our services, we can check what version of VKS is currently deployed. We can see the embedded version 3.3.1. And to update it, it's a really simple process. All we have to do is follow the links that are in the UI. This will bring you to not only a page that shows you all of the releases, including release notes, but also guide you to our support portal where you can download the new version of the service, which comes in the form of a simple definition file. Once we download this file, we go to our Kubernetes service and we can add new version. All I have to do here is click upload and select the package that I have just downloaded. And with that, I'll just click finish. This will register the new version with this environment. And after a while, we will see that now we have 2 active versions for our service. So all I have to do now is if I go back to manage service, I can select the version I wish to install, select the supervisor I'm installing this on, and just finish this operation. So very quickly, I don't have to do any configuration, any extra configuration. Just click next and make sure that this will finish properly. So the easiest way for me is usually to go back to manage service and just wait for the service to come back to the state of configured. And now, if I go back to my user, to my CLI, I can see it's compatible now. And if I go to create a cluster, I can see the version 1.33 is now available to me to use. So it's really as simple as that to unlock those new versions and new capabilities of our Kubernetes service. Once I deploy a cluster, very easily get my kubeconfig file, and I can log in and start using that. But on this note of deployment of a Kubernetes cluster, I do want to go through the flow just a little bit, not going through all of the details, but just to point out some of the enhancements we have done directly in the UI. So within the UI, the deployment is really simple. You can add things like your cluster name, select the version, as we were just talking about, but also we can, sorry, let me just move to the next one. Okay, Sorry about that. Let's just continue here. So we can go ahead and create a new cluster. So we'll go through this flow very quickly. Let me just skip through. Great. So I can give my cluster a name, select the release that I wish to deploy. But as I mentioned, we have also added some new things directly into the UI to make it even simpler for you to deploy the clusters. So you will see things that you can control, for example, certificate rotation directly in the UI. We also have more options now for your proxy configuration or, for example, your networking settings. And for your deployment of control plane of the Kubernetes cluster, again, you can still choose from the OS images that we provide through the subscribed content library. You will notice there are now 2 versions of Ubuntu. That's because we are also now offering Ubuntu with long-term support. And for worker nodes, I can go ahead and configure my worker nodes as I want to. Again, some of the new things, for example, I can directly add labels onto my nodes. This is very helpful, especially if you're doing any sort of automation. Or, for example, if I want to add any taints on my nodes, I can do it directly through this flow. I can also still add volume. So this is provided by the storage service. So you can see there's this abstraction of underlying infrastructure. So for example, if you're doing any AI ML workloads, you may want to add a little bit more space for GPU operators, for example. And with our node pools, we can always mix and match if we want to add additional ones, maybe in different configuration or with different operating systems. You can always choose that and create what you need. And Vincent has mentioned on the right-hand side, directly within the UI, the full Kubernetes YAML manifest is built in for us. So we can go ahead and download it. This is great if you are repeating this operation, if you want to use any kind of GitOps patterns, like continuous delivery, you can just take this, put it in your Git repo. But also keep in mind that the subset of API you see in the UI is not full. So you always have more options. So I personally like to create the structure of my cluster and then add additional settings. And once it's deployed, we can see all those constructs we have created. So the volumes, the network, load balancer, and also the virtual machines that make up this Kubernetes cluster. And then we can go ahead and log into this. For this, we do have a new unified CLI called VCF CLI. And you will see that this VCF CLI utilizes the plugin-based CLI. So we offer plugins for different functionalities. This will allow us to really expand the capabilities as well. We do have a specific plugin for cluster management. So what we can do is use this to create a context for the cluster that we have just deployed by simply grabbing the kubeconfig of this cluster and then getting access to that. And then we can just use our standard kubectl commands to manage our workload, deploy our apps, and everything that we need to do. But our platform is not just about workload. Deploying virtual machines and Kubernetes clusters is great, but we do need additional functions. And one of the new services that we have introduced is a secret store, which allows you to really get this centralized secret store and give you centralized management of all the secrets that you can then create and inject into your workloads, whether that's Kubernetes clusters or your virtual machines. So this is based on OpenBow. And I want to show you a quick demo of how you would enable or bring a new functionality like this into VCF. So under services in the VCF automation portal, you will see secret store, for example, listed there. So I can go into actions and I can just quickly install this, very quickly agree and continue after reading all of the licensing agreements, and then just selecting the region where I want this to be deployed and some basic configuration. So for example, secret store needs a definition of the storage class that is used for deployment. Once this is deployed, from this view, we can have a look in our infrastructure. We'll see our service was deployed. All of the pods that are supporting it are running. And from the consumer perspective, once this is deployed, you will notice that under our services, we will now have a new option for secrets, where we can directly in the UI go ahead and start creating secrets. So again, trying to make it really simple and give you options whether you want to do this in the UI, or you can, of course, use the VCF CLI to manage secrets as well. Once you create the secrets, they will be ready to be injected into your workload. And I want to finish this off in the next 5 minutes on how you enable all of this functionality. How do you get all of these services? And the way we are delivering this cloud experience is with the embedded declarative API, which is vSphere Supervisor, that exposes the API that you're talking to, but also all of these services. So whether that's VKS, VM service, or all of the other services that we have for networking, for storage, or if you need container registry, for example, Harbor, we just had a look at Secret Store. So the idea here is really to give you an extensible ecosystem that you can modify and adjust to whatever you need and what your workloads and your apps need, because everyone has different requirements. But most importantly, it gives you this environment, unified environment, truly unified, with a single API entry where you can bring in your service and provide exactly the same and consistent consumption experience. And again, very important in the sense of consumer experience is providing that abstraction from the underlying infrastructure. So as you saw, when we are deploying workloads, deploying VMs or Kubernetes clusters, we don't have to have any knowledge of the underlying infrastructure. That also leads into the security, which will be the topic after me, because it is really important that we do not expose infrastructure things like storage or networking directly. Everything is done in an abstracted and a very secure way. So in order to enable this, again, we've introduced improvements in VCF 9, mainly now giving you an option to enable vSphere Supervisor directly during the workload domain creation. So when you are deploying your workload domains, you will very quickly be able to just enable vSphere Supervisor and provide some very basic input in terms of which NSX and VPC to consume that has been configured in this flow. So making it really, really simple for you, but also you still have the option to opt out from this during the workload domain creation and do it then directly in the vSphere UI as you would have done before. And once we enable Supervisor, just very quickly, one of the other improvements you will see is that we've been really conscious about resources that this requires. So you will notice that we have minimized this and now by default deploy a single control plane VM to really quickly get you to that functionality. Once we deploy this, you will also notice we have our version that is embedded. This is important because we are also introducing async updates for Supervisor. So now you will be able to update these as well and provide more functionality to the environment. We also separated management and workload zones to make it easier for you to add additional workload zones and expand your Supervisor cluster and give you more resources. And with the control plane, as I mentioned, the default is a single control plane deployment now, but you can very easily enable high availability, which is a process that will go ahead and start deploying 2 additional control plane VMs to provide HA. As always with Supervisor, always make sure that the configuration status is completely finished and everything is back to ready state, because keeping in mind this is a desired state system and a Kubernetes ecosystem. So always making sure everything is back to ready and back to green, and then you can start deploying your workload. So thank you very much. And with that, I will hand off to both.
Hey, thanks, Katarina. Let me share quickly here. There we go. Hi, folks. I'm Bob Plankers. These folks are hard acts to follow, but I'm going to see what I can do here. Let's talk about security and compliance. Compliance is a business process, of course, and security is really where our focus is moving forward here with VCF. And VCF, there's a lot of opportunities for security. We've had a lot of stuff built in for a long time, but we've really got a number of three main focuses here moving forward. One, we really want you to be secure faster, be able to deploy stuff and be able to I'll just put it this way. Security isn't something that moves your organization forward. It's overhead. It does prevent it from your organization from going backwards really fast. But at the end of the day, you've got other stuff to do. And so we're cognizant of that. We want the security to be flexible. We want to be able to just acknowledge that not every organization is the same. Not every workload is the same, and move forward, allowing people to get this stuff done easily and flexibly. Trust is a big thing about VCF and really a differentiator between us and other environments, because you can see the whole thing. I mean, what Kelsey was showing earlier, the ability to periodically, and minutes, not days, not months, that sort of thing, but minutes in the cycle time between auditing environments and seeing what's changed, seeing what needs to be updated, things that have changed. We talk about trust a lot. That zero trust is something that we talk a lot about in the industry, and zero trust means less trust, not more. I see a lot of designs out there, a lot of environments that add zero trust capabilities, but then they've got all this other stuff there, and they run by other people and for organizations that want to centralize and know exactly where their data is and who's got access, that's really important. And then the last thing, recovering quickly. And this is something that we kind of stopped talking about a long time ago because it's just part of the platform. But things like, and I saw Daniel mention DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act, it's almost like they read the feature set of VCF and all of the resilience features, stuff that you can't predict, stuff that you can predict, being able to de-risk application updates and even just get out of the way of natural disasters and things like that. It's a very powerful platform, and it continues to be that. So let's talk about some of the new things in here as well. One of the big things is Lifecycle Manager. Update Manager is gone. Goodbye. Thank you for your service. But it's Lifecycle Manager, and a lot of feedback went into Lifecycle Manager. I'm not going to get into everything here, but one of the biggest things that has been added, and it started in 8 Update 3, live patching of the virtual machine monitor, and we'll talk more about the virtual machine monitor in a second, but extending that in ESX to be able to patch other services, other system daemons, all of that stuff, and VM kernel components. Our goal, our vision for it is that 80% of the patching can be done in a live patching sort of way, where the VMs don't have to evacuate. The host goes into partial maintenance mode. That's that / the yellow and gray / icon. And then if the virtual machine monitor does need to be patched, it's like a process to process vMotion. We call it fast suspend resume, but it's milliseconds, microseconds. And bad news is, from a security perspective, TPM enabled hosts have good security, but because of that good security, you can't do live patching yet. We're working on that. That's a roadmap item, but because we don't, obviously high security environments would like this too. But how do you invent a way to replace kernel modules and kernel components without letting the bad guys do it too? And so we know how, we will do it, but just give us a little time. Continuing on this, ESX. ESX has got a lot of defense in depth and improving some things. Actually, I've got slides on all of this stuff. I'll just get right into it. We've been talking about exec installed only for ages now. Our ecosystem's got an inertia to it, is basically what it is. And so getting all of our partners to sign their code and to stop telling you that you should shut off the security controls and all that stuff. Now, if you try to shut these things off, you get an undismissible alarm and says you've got a security problem. Well, and that's true. So if somebody tells you that you need to do this, just say no, don't do it, that sort of thing. Secure Boot. Secure Boots is 15 years old. It's great at preventing malware from loading at boot. I know there's some criticism of UEFI firmware, that it's a solution looking for a problem and adds complexity. we're past that. Go ahead and turn it on. You don't need the shell scripts anymore. You can just enforce it with configuration profiles. And that's really nice. Let's talk about inside the host itself, because this adds context to a lot of what we're doing here. So guest operating systems at the very core of what people are interested in. Infrastructure is infrastructure, but you really want workloads to run. Your guest OS has probably got some process permissions and processes in that. If you're not running Windows 3.1 or DOS or anything, which those still run actually. They don't have VMware tools, but yeah, you can still run them, and there are places that are doing that. Around that is a VM runtime. If you log into ESX and type PS, log in by SSH, and then turn SSH off again, please. You'll see the VM runtime or the container runtime in the process list, and that's another security boundary there. That's the actual all the emulated hardware and all that stuff. And then around that is a sandbox, or VMK access is what we call that. And the sandbox knows what the VM runtime or container runtime should be doing. And if it tries to do anything else, it shuts it down, throws alarms, and that's good. All of the VMs, all of the workloads on a host get these protections. The host itself is a security boundary as well. And then we're told that CPU and memory have security boundaries in them as well. But beginning about 8 years ago with Spectre and Meltdown and L1TF and MDS and all the variants since, there's been dozens and dozens since, it's a little more flexible than we had expected, than the promises that were made. And so there's two main types of vulnerabilities that we're looking at here. One is what I'm talking about, hardware vulnerabilities, where a guest operating system could coerce the CPU or the memory controller into giving it data it's not authorized for. So that's bad, and then this other one, VM escape. And where you can break into, or an attacker breaks into a guest operating system and then can break into ESX from there. And that's not good either, clearly. So what are we doing about it? Well, let's start with hardware vulnerabilities. Confidential computing. This has been a big thing in the public cloud because of that trust. The public cloud, you lose the ability to verify things. You have to have a lot of blind trust. You don't know who your neighbors are. And that's not the case with VCF. And so, yeah, we've had some time here to take a look at how we wanted to do this, but we've had these technologies for a while, Intel SGX, in AMD SEV-ES, but those had problems. You can't vMotion, you're keeping secrets from the hypervisor, and so you lose some stuff. Well, AMD and Intel basically upped their game, came out with a new version of both, TDX, SEV-SMP, that allows the hypervisor to participate in the secret keeping, and so we can get some functionality back. And so what that does basically, how it's implemented, AMD, for example, has a secure processor. It's a little ARM chip built into their EPYC CPUs, which is actually kind of cool. And your guest operating system can request an encryption key from that security processor. And it's not an all or nothing thing. You can turn it on in a granular fashion. And so if you've got guest OSs that support it, cool. If you are still running Windows 3.1 and it doesn't support that, well, that's fine too. But this will protect your data. It encrypts your data in memory and also in CPU registers too. And so if there is a leak, all they'll get is a ciphertext. They're going to get the encrypted form. And and then you can go about patching that, because we can integrate with firmware update, hardware managers and things like that. So that's nice. These are the initial steps. So it's basically the same as SGX and SEV-ES at the moment. The roadmap has got greater things to come. Requires host firmware support. If you're interested in this, reach out to your account team, your TAM, whoever. There's an RPQ process. We actually want to ask you a couple of questions first, and what you're doing with it. We want to build something that you want to use, is what it amounts to. So that's good. The next one is deprivileging workloads. So in a CPU, there's basically there's a bunch of privilege levels, but there's two that are really used. The kernel mode and the user mode. And kernel mode basically is the run of the whole machine. And for performance reasons, everything that is interested in performance uses the kernel mode. And but if you have a VM escape, so VMs are running as in kernel mode. If you have a VM escape, it owns a whole machine, right? That's a problem. Well, CPU manufacturers have helped us out and made user mode capable of going as fast as the kernel mode in many cases. And so we're moving the virtual machine monitor down into user mode and call it the user level monitor. It's there in 9. It's not the default, but it will show up if you're using memory tiering, which is super cool, by the way, and you should check it out, or you're using confidential computing. There are also some advanced parameters if you want to turn it on yourself, no problem there. But that helps with the VM escape. One of the last things I want to mention for an ESX is why don't, those sandboxes are neat. Why don't we do that for everything that's running on ESX, including the processes? No, these are just 4 example processes. There's many more, but we've wrapped them all in the sandbox as well. They've each got their own sandbox, and that's nice. So help contain if there is a vulnerability. A lot of open source projects, NTPD, all that stuff. If there happens to be a vulnerability, help keep it contained there. Other things that we've done, TLS 1.3, by default everywhere. That was actually the true in 8 as well inside the clusters, but the default for backwards compatibility was TLS 1.2 for client things, the vSphere client and such. Now that's changed to default to 1.3, and you can turn off 1.2 if you want by selecting the TLS profile that's 1.3. So you'll have to find other things to talk to your compliance folks about, sports, the weather, whatever, Kelsey talked a little bit about these sorts of things. The idea that VCF operations is centralizing a lot of stuff, and certificate management is a big one. That's a rabbit hole you can get lost in for days. And especially now over the next 2 years where the browser certificate lifespan is going to be shortened to 47 days. Automation is going to be key, and that's and so this is going to be really important. Again, VCF operations, checking security controls, monitoring the whole system, break fix stuff, auditing. There's a lot of cool stuff going on here, and so other things I want to talk about: key wrapping. We only have a couple of minutes left here. Key wrapping. So in VM encryption, vSAN encryption can use an external KMS. And one of the complaints is that KMSs, what we don't do is we don't delete keys out of a KMS because we don't know that you're done with them. And so that leads KMS admins to having thousands of keys in there, and they don't know which ones they are. So clean that all up. We've got this thing called a wrapping key now. And so standard key providers in 9, you can set up a wrapping key, and it stores 1 key out in your KMS, or 2 or 3 or whatever. We don't delete the wrapping key either because you still might need it, but orders of magnitude fewer keys, and you can give them a custom name so you can find them, all of that stuff. And so this is pretty cool. You can't just migrate to it. You can't just turn this on. But you can rekey into a new key provider. And the GitHub repository I'm about to show you has got some sample code on how to do that. Last thing I want to mention, identity. Identity is a huge way that attackers get in, and a huge way you can protect yourself. Bringing MFA and all of that stuff to this game. We're trying to get out of the business of being an identity provider and leave it to the people that are good at it. And stuff like Symantec VIP, all that stuff is a nice on-premises solution. We can plug it in. It's VCF-wide configuration. The broker, so VIDM has become the VMware identity broker, and it's embedded into vCenter like it has been for a while, in fact. But it's also a separate appliance, or it can be a cluster of 3 appliances, and you can build it however you want, how much redundancy you want. But there's the big one here is generic identity provider support. That SAML that you're always looking for, the OAuth 2 provider that isn't part of our 3 or 4 certified list. You can use them now and configure it, and it works great. And so that's really nice. I mentioned the GitHub repository. Yes, I'm a security guy with a QR code. It's even worse. It goes to a redirector, which goes somewhere else. But at any rate, if you want to just go out to our GitHub repository and search for security, you'll find the STIGs if you're interested in those. The ones for 9 are out, and this repository as well. And we've got the security configuration guide for 9 out. We're still working on that. There's going to be some cleanup, so stay tuned. Last thing, and I know Vincent mentioned this already, Explore. You should come and join us at Explore if you're not already planning on doing that. And if you're at Explore and you see us, come talk to us. We do like people. We're not weird. Well, we are weird, sure, but you're kind of weird. And we enjoy talking with you, hearing about what's going on, and just saying hi. So please come and see us. The content catalog is live, and I'll leave it at that. I really appreciate you. I know we all appreciate you joining here and supporting us. All of the good questions that are out there, I should actually look to see what other questions might be around. But if we didn't get to your question here, maybe I can answer some live. What performance costs are associated with using VM isolation confidential computing? That's a good question because security is never free in that regard. There's always a trade-off. There are performance costs. It depends on the workload. You're not going to like my answer because it's the standard. It depends, and so, but it depends on the workload, what the workload is doing, the IO there. But yeah, to start with here in the initial versions of it too, it's going to be a little slower. We're doing some performance tuning on it as well. So give it a shot. Oh, you asked that twice. Let's see. How does stuff like confidential computing work with things like vMotion? Well, our goal is to have it work seamlessly with vMotion, but confidential computing right now doesn't work with vMotion. So that VM will be pinned to that host. And yeah, it becomes an operational consideration. But this is really kind of a tech preview thing going on. And yeah, so yeah, take a look at it. Again, tell us how we can improve it, what you need there. Let's see. Secret stores. Yeah, I think the rest is mostly for other folks. Again, appreciate you and thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. We will be ending this. We appreciate your time.